Politics has shaped humanity since the dawn of time. From cavemen with the biggest sticks deciding where the tribe should hunt, to kings ruling by divine right, and finally to our more enlightened times of modern democracy, where people sometimes have a say. Gaming, however, rarely tackles politics in a serious way. Sure, games like New Vegas, Bioshock, or Metal Gear Solid definitely explore political themes and have opinions on it. And of course, grand strategy games like Tropico or Europa Universalis let you steer entire nations, but they really tackle it in a serious way. Most Paradox games have you usually play as the so-called spirit of the nation. You are not the leader of the country, you are more its will manifested. You're its god and ultimate decision maker, no matter what your fixed citizens desire. This also brings up the rather weird issue where you always make the best decision for your people. No matter what. I mean, you have no horse in the race, so to speak. You can't be bribed because it's a video game. There aren't any actual benefits to ripping off your constituents or nation like there is in real life. There is no incentive to make a bad decision like there is in real life. Or, in Tropico's case, it plays much more like a city builder with some fun dictator shenanigans on top of it. Now, sure, it's all in good fun. I mean, who hasn't wanted to enact their will in a small island nation? But these games don't ever ask you to feel the burden of leadership. They really lack the one thing that's required to be an actual political simulator, the grounded human experience of being a politician. And that's more than likely intentional. After all, politics is just always polarizing. It's going to be polarizing by nature due to the fact that people have different opinions on everything. It's tough to cover every angle of an issue without being accused of bias. And even if you're not trying to be biased about any issues, your personal beliefs are going to inevitably influence your perspective and how you talk about the issue. Plus, honestly, most gamers aren't exactly begging for the next presidential simulator video game. But then there's Suzerain. This game doesn't just dabble in politics, it makes you feel what it's like to lead a nation. It's a game where every choice, compromise, and failure weighs on you. Now, firstly, what is Suzerain? If you are not familiar, it is obviously a political simulator game set in an alternate universe. Imagine a world caught in a Cold War, not just between superpowers like in our world, but between ideals. On one side, there is Malvianism, which is a more uncompromising version of communism. The nations who follow it in this world actually adhere to communist ideas. In those nations, workers actually own the means of production. Factory workers own the factories. Farm workers are organized in workers' communes and co-op. There are large social welfare programs that are actually working. On the other side of this Cold War is Arcasian liberalism, or capitalism as you would know it. They also hold much tighter to its actual core principles than in our world. They actually have privatized public services. Social welfare is at an absolute minimum. They rely more on private military companies than a state-ran army. Regulations are lax or non-existent. This is the world of Suzerain, a political simulator that immerses you in a high-stakes struggle, where ideology shapes nations and the lives of citizens in it. And at the heart of this ideological battleground lies Swordland, a nation at a crossroads. Decades of turmoil have left it fractured. A recession is crippling its economy, political corruption festers, and deep state actors maintain control of its institutions, and its people are divided. It's a country desperate for leadership. It is teetering between democratic reform and authoritarian control. And that's where you come in. You play as Anton Rain, Swordland's newly elected president and part of the United Swordland Party, a big tent party full of almost every ideology except for the extreme left and extreme right. They have won every election since the country overthrew its monarchy. You step into the office after a hard-fought campaign. The people hope you'll bring prosperity and stability. But the shadow of your predecessor looms large, and many are blaming him and your party for the economic crisis you now face. The decisions you make will determine Swordland's future and your legacy. So how does Suzerain do it? How does it manage to be the perfect political game? I think it's really due to a couple of key factors. The first factor is immersive political realism. You have to realistically balance competing parties and factions and different sub-factions within the party. You have to manage the public opinion of your administration if you ever want to win re-election, and the government budget as well. You also have to compete with an overly zealous military, which is very capable of queuing you. You also have to deal with assassination attempts and almost every other problem that developing nations currently face in our own world. When you make a decision, it affects everything. When you decide what bills to sign or veto, that affects public opinion and what the political parties who supported it think of you. That affects how the nationalists think of you, how the capitalists think of you, how the communists think of you. When you give speeches and talk to public figures, they remember what you said and supported. When you make promises, they remember and expect you to follow through. There will be consequences if you don't follow your promises and actually do what you say you were going to do. This game is all about the ripple effects of what an actual politician has to deal with. A good example of this in-game is when you can make a promise to a person within your political party to give them a position within your cabinet. If you don't follow through, they will make your life hell and bring their whole wing of the party with them. Another big ripple effect in-game is your relationship with the media. At the start of the game, you're offered a deal with a media mogul who, as long as you give him one free request, he will make the media only give you good press and downplay any mistakes you make. That one decision will resonate throughout the whole game. If you don't take the deal, then every news media outlet that he owns will constantly trash you. You could make puppy murder illegal. He will find a way to take issue with it. But if you accept the deal, he'll make good on his end of the promise, and public opinion will be much more malleable to what you want. Another great part about this game is how perception matters. For a more real-world example, in America, the country that I'm from, if you talk about free healthcare, you will be labeled a socialist or more likely a communist and face a lot of resistance, even from the more left-leaning factions within my country. But if you temper your rhetoric a little bit and put a spin on it, like only subsidizing certain people if they make below a certain income level or putting caps on medication prices, even though it's not the same thing, but you're functionally working towards a more socialized healthcare model, you are going to get a lot farther and get a lot more support. This game models it perfectly. In politics, perception is everything. If you are perceived as a communist, people are going to think you're a communist. If you are perceived as a fascist, people are going to think you are a fascist and that you support the policies of what they perceive you as. That's why people say Bernie Sanders is a communist. People perceive him as that. And even if he doesn't actually enact or want certain communist policies, they are going to say that everything he wants is communist. In this game, you can pretty successfully enact communist reform, and not many people will have issues with it. But if you constantly talk about eating the rich and the bourgeoisie and rescuing the proletariat from the evils of capitalism, that is going to cause a huge stink, which can end your run prematurely. This game also expertly shows that politics is all about back scratching. Nothing in this world is free, and if you want someone to bend their ideals, you better be able to promise something or compromise in return. A big storyline in this game is reforming the Constitution. Now, no matter how you choose to reform or what you choose to reform, some wings of your own party are not going to be happy when you go to them and ask for their support. Whether they want to bribe or they want you to remove or add certain things to the Constitution, you're going to have to give it to them if you want their support. You are not able to just enact your will on the country and political system unless you work the whole game to become a dictator and slowly spread your influence across all institutions. Other political games really struggle to actually show this. Like in Tropico, as I mentioned, if you want to basically ignore a faction that you don't like and everything else is managed well, it does not matter. You don't ever have to deal with political factions or faction leaders to maintain their support for your political system. They won't threaten to gridlock your political system or not pass bills that you want. It doesn't matter in that game. Same with most Stellaris games. You don't actually really have to interact with the political system. In Stellaris, there are factions in it, but guess what? If they don't like you, it really doesn't do much. A coup is pretty hard to actually have happen. Even if every single faction in the game doesn't like you, It does not matter. You can still continue to make every single choice that you had before, and the world just keeps on spinning. Suzerain is the exact opposite. It's all about the art of the compromise. If you make your party mad enough, they will kick you out of the party and put the entire country in a standstill. They will not allow any laws to pass, and they will hurt the entire country. But it's great because that's what happens in real life. Politics is a big game of making friends and counting favors, and Suzerain shows that perfectly. Another reason that Suzerain is a great political simulator is because of the narrative depths and moral dilemmas that you will face. Most other political games do not actually attempt to simulate this. Due to how hard this game actually is, it actually feels rewarding to not take bribes or do immoral actions, because doing those actions actually gives you so much in-game benefit. One of the best examples in-game of the moral dilemmas that you're going to face is when your best friend and vice president gets caught in a huge scandal that is going to rock your administration. Now, there's a couple ways that you can resolve this. You can throw him under the bus and take no responsibility, or only put the blame on the other participant of the scandal and keep him as your vice president. I think this decision really resonates because he is such a good friend in game. The writing really makes you feel like you've known him for a long time, and he's honestly probably one of the only characters who supports you through everything and always has your back. He has no ulterior motives like other people in the game do. He just wants to help you with everything, and the dilemma is he fucked up bad and jeopardized the whole country. Now, hopefully, assuming your head's screwed on right, the right thing to do would be to at least fire him, if not hold him criminally responsible. But that's hard to do because he gives a lot of benefits to your administration and he's your best friend. What deal are you going to take? Are you going to protect your best friend because that's what you would do in real life? Or are you going to do the right thing and actually hold him accountable for his actions? Another good example of this, and also happens a lot in the real world, you have the chance to make a trade deal with a country that actively commits genocide against their own people and is ruled by a dictator with an iron fist. Now, he wants to make a trade deal and requests help with his rebel problem. Now, the trade deal he offers is one of the best deals in game. It tremendously helps your country, and all you have to do is make a deal with a tyrannical dictator and help him oppress some people. Now, don't get me wrong, the oppressed people also do commit acts of violence against the state, but, they're oppressed. Give them a pass. Now, do you compromise your ideals and take the deal? I mean, there are a million ways to rationalize it. Even if you don't take the deal, someone else will probably accept that deal. At least if you accept it, then your citizens will benefit and you can maybe do something else to help them. And besides, what are you going to do? Some nations are civilized and some aren't. Or do you stand by your ideals and refuse the trade deal even though it is an undeniably good deal? Obviously, this happens in real life. So many countries trade with China. My own country trades with China like fucking trillions of dollars a year in exports and imports. China is a terrible country. Sorry if you're from China. I'm sure the people are nice. But they're currently genociding and having Uyghur Muslims, I believe that's how it's pronounced, in work camps. They constantly suppress free media, suppress people, Tiananmen Square, a million other things. But what does our country choose to do? Trade with them because it gives a million benefits to our country and our citizens. This game has a million other choices just like that, where you're forced to choose between your ideals and morals and then just pure political pragmatism. This game also excels in player agency. Almost every option you're able to choose is probably something that you would want to say if you were actually there. There's never really a point in the game where you're like, well, why can't I say this? I feel like I would probably want to say something like this. 9 times out of 10, they've already thought of that. And almost no two games are alike. You can decide what ideology you want to follow, how extreme the reforms you want to push are, how boisterous you are about your ideology, how you want to treat your family and cabinet members, who are you close to, what you want to invest in, what regions you care about more. You get to decide what Anton Rain is like, whether he's a democratic hero or this universe's version of Mussolini. You, the player, get to decide, and that is at the core of really what makes Suzerain a great political game. You get to play how you want, and they actually have realistic consequences for each choice. They are also great at providing unbiased opinions on both sides. When you decide whether to pursue a more centralized or decentralized economy, members of your cabinet will make good points on the pros and cons of each side. This game will take whatever ideology you choose to support seriously. It won't make fun of you or call you a retard because of what you think. It won't call you a neckbeard when you play as a fascist and make snide little remarks the whole game. It takes it seriously. More strong armed people in your cabinet support it, while more liberal people find it abhorrent. This game shows a realistic portrayal of what it's like to follow through on each ideology. They don't make judgments, they don't have little jokes about it. It is just a serious, accurate portrayal of the ideology that you choose. There is no point in the game where everyone in the cast agrees that you made a bad decision and that was a bad political move to have, or a bad political opinion to have. Somebody will probably support you in what you did. It's not interested in lecturing you on your politics and what you believe. It just wants to show you what would play out in a political sandbox that they made. Suzerain, it's a lot more than just a game. It honestly makes you consider and feel like you are actually leading a nation. In Suzerain, every choice is yours, and so are the consequences, whether they be good or bad. Whether you lead Swordland to ruin or to prosperity, everything is up to you. And I think that's what makes Suzerain the best political game ever made. That's all I have. If you're still sticking around, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you could like and subscribe, that would be lit. And remember that Jesus loves you.